second customer testimonial for today, and I'd like to introduce Roxana to the stage. She's head of search and SEO at Alamy, and she's going to be covering tips and tricks on working with images on the web beyond just optimizing alt tags. So, Roxana, thank you and welcome.
Hi. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. My name is Roxana. I work for Alamy, and you probably haven't heard of us. We're a stock photography company as big as Shutterstock, but you haven't heard of us because we work a lot with partners around the world. But I joined Alamy when they had about 150 million images in their collection, and now we've reached 300 million as of 2 weeks ago. So that's quite a big number, but after hearing Esteban talk earlier saying they get 325 million images a month, it doesn't feel that big anymore, to be honest, but it's big for me anyway. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about image search, because it's not as well known as web search in general, and whoever does SEO, you know, there are not articles on image search specifically, there's not as much information, and there's definitely not as much experimentation going on and being shared with everybody. So, I will cover some, here we go. I'll cover some of the basics really fast because I just learned I have about 20 minutes and my presentation should be 34, so sorry about that. We're going to talk a little bit about crawling images, how they get indexed, how they can rank and where they rank, and how do we measure them. So, let's start with crawling. This is pretty much the idea we have about crawling, very, very simplified. Crawler gets a page, downloads the HTML, finds resources on that page, JavaScript, CSS, images, and then there's a whole side of rendering there that I'm skipping on purpose, and then it adds information to the index. But when it comes to images, all the image files that are found during the parsing of the HTML are sent to an image crawl queue where a different user agent comes and analyzes them. So you have Googlebot image for Google. And I'm mostly going to base this on Googlebot, but 90% of what works for Google works everywhere. So, you know, you can do sitemaps and include the images you have on pages to help bots find them faster. I'm not going to go into that. You all know how to do sitemaps. What you need to know is that from May this year, some of the tags in image sitemaps have been deprecated. If you still have them in your sitemaps, keep them. They'll just be ignored. No point in doing all that work. But if you're creating new sitemaps, don't add caption, title, dates, license tags. You don't need them anymore. And then image sitemaps are some of my favorites because they're the only ones that allow you to link outside of your domain where the sitemap is hosted. So normally you'd have to have the same domain, but with images, they could be hosted anywhere, including on CDNs, which they usually are. And then thanks to Lily Ray, we got this piece of advice from John Miller. If you do host images on CDNs, try to redirect them to a static address on your website. So if you do change CDNs in the future, you're still linking to the same URL on your site always, and you're not changing it. I'm really sorry, something has gone wrong with my colors here, so it's a bit dark. What this is showing is 2 redirects and the 200 OK status code. So if your images do redirect from one CDN to a different domain and then to a final domain, just make sure none of the redirects go through a blocked domain, because if that domain is blocked in robots.txt, the crawler won't be able to follow it to the end, and your images might not show up anywhere. You can, of course, you need to make images discoverable if you want them crawled. Make sure they're added in a SRC attribute and not as background or part of CSS. But if you do want to keep them from crawling, you can just use robots.txt to block them by invoking the Googlebot image user agent. And if you need to test if images are crawlable, it's as simple as just pasting the URL of an image in either Google Search Console or using a reach results test if you don't have access to that domain, and just seeing if Google can actually fetch it. So then let's talk a little bit about indexing. These are the 6 image formats that Google mentions in his documentation that it can crawl and index and rank you for. But of course, it can also identify base 64 images that are inlined in your HTML. So it can recognize those as well. But my question is, how about, oh yeah, this is really bad. First is AVIF, and second one is JPEG XL or JXL. So these two new image formats that are supposed to get way better compression and be able to occupy less, but have the same clarity and quality of images. And these two formats, Google is actually involved in working with both, which means at some point you will definitely be able to recognize them, crawl them, and index them for you when these will become more mainstream. Now, when images are being looked at, we know Google also looks at different things, like page content and alt text and file names, but we also know from documentation that Google uses computer vision. And I mentioned we know from documentation because if it does use computer vision, why do I have this nice blonde lady writing for pizza? Right? This is a search for anchovy pizza in Google FR. I'm not even going to try to say the French search term. But this is happening because somebody thought, well, is Google actually using computer vision, looking at images and understanding what's inside the image? Or is it just using surrounding text? And the answer in this case is it's pretty much using surrounding text and the alt information and the file name. But then you might say, well, that experiment was done in 2011 when AI wasn't this big, computer vision wasn't such a big thing as it is today, so even Google could get it wrong. But I did my slides 3 days ago, so that search result is from 3 days ago from Google FR. So I'm pretty sure if you search for it now, you can still find it. So the answer to is Google using computer vision for me is maybe or sometimes, but not always, for sure. Bing actually went on record and said they always check every image with computer vision. Even when people said, but that's expensive, they said, we always do it. And to be fair, sometimes Bing's image search results are way better than Google, so maybe that's why. Now, if you don't want, I'm really sorry about my slides, they looked a bit different this morning. If you don't want your images to show in full size in Google, but you still want to rank for them, you can opt out of inline linking. You send Google a 200 OK response in the headers, but you don't actually set the body. So you give Google the response but not the image, so Google will just put a small thumbnail against your search result, and that will show in search, but the full quality image won't. And of course, you can keep them out of the index just like you do with pages, but it's just for images. If you add this on a page, the images on the page won't show up in Google's index, but the page itself can still rank for text-based search results. And if you have a certain type of content, you want to keep it out of safe search, but not regular search, you need to add one of these two tags, but to be safe, just add both. Then we talk a lot about image sizes, but that can mean different things, and I just want to quickly clarify. You have the file size, so how much space in kilobytes or megabytes an image actually occupies on a hard disk, on a server, wherever it might be, and this size can be reduced by using lossy or lossless compression. You have the pixel size or the image resolution, and Google recommends having images that have 1200 pixels wide. And those seem to work well, so anything above that will do well for you with Google at least. And then you have the aspect ratio. So Google seems to like these three aspect ratios mostly, and you're going to find them listed in all the structured data documentation for products and recipes and everything. Images also come with embedded information, and I'm sure everybody has heard about EXIF that has camera details, but I don't know how many of you know about IPTC or XMP. And all of these can carry information alongside the image, and it's quite different, but they do have something in common, and that usually has to do with copyright information. And Google doesn't actually read EXIF, it reads IPTC. And it reads these fields, it's creator, credit line, yeah, I'm missing something there. The last one is copyright. It can read this embedded information from your image and then put it in the image preview in image search. So you could see who owns the copyright for an image that had IPTC metadata embedded. And it doesn't read just those, it also reads the web statement of rights and the licensor URL, which are two other IPTC fields. But in this case, Google has also worked with schema.org and Alamy, as it happens, to implement structured data that would allow you to get the same information shown in image search results. So in this example here, the first URL will tell you where you can go to buy that image if you want to buy it, and the second one will tell you what kind of license applies for that image when you buy it. And it looks like this when you implement structured data where you have those two fields in IPTC, because you get a badge. Just like you get with recipes and product, you get one that says licensable. So this way I know I'm not actually buying a yacht, I'm buying an image of a yacht. Disappointing, I know. This is the schema for it, very simple. New thing that's coming from Google, they're working with a professor from Harvard in identifying different variations of skin tones and then classifying them in these 10 different colors. So they want to implement the skin tone scale that they use in image search. So for instance, and this is going to be just for the ladies, I hope, if you're searching for wedding makeup and you want ideas, you can then go and filter the results by your own skin tone, so you only get ideas that will actually work for you. Because usually I see people with like nice blue eyeshadow, that doesn't work for me, I tried it. So they're going to implement this, but then they need our help, the people who have images, like the people in the beauty industry, and not only to add special structured data to identify what skin tone we might be showing in our images. Coming soon. Let's talk about ranking. You can rank, again, sorry about this, you can rank a page without an image, you can't rank an image without a page. So if you link to your JPEGs all over the internet, they're not going to rank, they need an HTML page to rank against. When I joined Alamy, I realized I didn't know anything about image search, and as I said before, internet wasn't helping. So I ended up reading a lot of patents, and this is an excerpt from one of them, and I wanted to focus on the fact that Google has a bit of a score that it determines to see how relevant an image is against text. So we already know Google looks at the text surrounding the image. But what's more interesting is this score can be used in different applications. So it's not just image search, it's web search, but they also say they use it for summary generation. Remember those feature snippets with somebody else's image? Yeah. So to go in a bit of detail, the score is actually more complex. It looks at so many different things and it calculates different scores for them. So for instance, it looks at two images and calculates how similar they are to each other. Or it looks at two images and calculates what's the probability of somebody who sees image A to then click on image B. So that's kind of how you get recommended images. And then, of course, a lot of the scores are around search terms and how relevant search terms are to any given image. And these features that Google looks at, they're at different levels. You have features that have to do with the image, so image level, that are about the image size, the width-height ratio, if the image is blurry or sharp, if it has great contrast, if it's very colorful and it will attract the eye, if it has faces in it, so pretty much if it's depicting people. And then also looking, is it like a photograph or is it like a computer-generated graphic? At page level, Google looks at relative position of the image on the X and Y axis against the page. It looks at the relative size the image occupies against the page, and of course the relative width and height. And then there are site level signals as well that Google is analyzing. And for instance, it's looking at the number of times one image appears on a website. And to give you an example, you have your logo, that will appear on every single page. So then Google knows that's not an image that needs to rank against one specific page. So if you're ever wondering, all those SEO articles saying, put your images at the top, is that a thing? Ish, not quite. And that's because, yes, Google does look at relative position, so you will see is your image at the top or at the bottom, but it also looks at relative size, which is very important. So if you have a very small image at the top of the page, but that image occupies about 2% of the entire page, it's not going to pass the relative size score, so then it's not going to be considered as being a very important image for the page. So yes, it's good to place your images high, but that's not the only factor that you should consider. It should also be a prominent image for that page if you want it to do well. You want to read more about image patterns? These are the 2 people I recommend to start with. The late Bill Slonsky, his website is being kept up by SiteGround, so you still have a chance to go in and read all the patterns he's deciphered for us. Don't believe I read them raw from Google ever. You can't understand a thing. And then we have J.C. Chouinard, and I hope I said your name right, J.C., who also talks quite a bit about image search, and he has quite some nice ideas. So if you're interested in reading more, just check out his website. Right, where do images rank? Web search, image search, of course. They can appear in news search, shopping, even video search, because you add an image poster to your videos. And then, of course, they show up in your Discover feed. And I got this from SEMrush's sensor tool. It's for the US desktop database, and it shows you that 56% of web search results have images in them. It's a lot, right? Because it's web search. It's supposed to be just 10 blue links and that's it, but it's definitely not that anymore. And to go in a bit more detail and break it by different categories, you can see things like beauty and travel show even more, towards 70% of images in the search results. But then, quite surprising, arts and entertainment, that in my head is just a gallery of paintings and art installations, it's only showing images for 30% of search results. So I'm not quite sure why this is happening, but I'm thinking those are less technical sites. They don't optimize as well for images. So it's not that they don't have them, it's just that Google is not picking them up maybe. While websites like travel, business, and beauty, they tend to have more technical teams behind them. So their images get indexed better and then they can actually show up in ranking. But home and garden, that was the biggest surprise. That's like 85% of home and garden search results show images. So, I don't know, my theory might not be good. Measurement, so how do we measure image search? And this is my favorite slide because you don't, no I'm kidding, but it's very hard. You don't get tools that kind of give you organic visibility for you and competitors, so you can easily look at image search and say we're doing better than them. You get ranking tools that will check a set of keywords you feed it for your site or your competitors, but that's very limited. With 300 million images, you can't imagine how many keywords we rank for. We can never check rankings for that. And then even though you do get some data in the Search Console, it's not really granular. You can look at page and query and device and country, and you have a couple other features, but that's about it. You can't really dig down deeper in image relating to image search data. But if you look at all the different places where images can show up in Google, it kind of resumes to this tree. You have the image pack or an image carousel. You have the embedded thumbnails in the blue links, the ones in the middle, and then you have the images in image search. So any kind of image group you find in any result could be tracked back to one of these. Sorry about that. So if it is a carousel pack, a carousel or an image pack, you do see in Google Search Console, you see impressions only if your image is in view. So if your image is part of the carousel, but the user has to scroll through it to see it, you only get the impression after they scroll. When they click, if the carousel takes them to your website, you get the click. But if it's an image pack, they actually go to image search, so it's a refinement, and you don't get the click. And then in terms of position, if all those images came from our website, I would see all of them ranking first in this case, because the image pack is first on the page. So wherever the position of the pack, all images inside will get the same position in Search Console, which makes it so much more confusing. You have to pay attention to things like this, and this is an example from Brody's website where he started ranking in an image pack, which increased the impressions he was getting from web search, but he virtually got no extra clicks. and he wasn't understanding why until he saw that image there and realized that's why. Because anybody clicking on that would actually go to image search. So his web search clicks were not moving at all. And I know in my tweet I said, if you see keywords ranking first, but an image tag can appear anywhere in the search results, but usually it will be in the first position. Then if you are in image search, you get impressions only when your image is in view, so people have to scroll down to find your image. You get the click when people click, actually not directly. When they click here, they get the image preview. When they click on the image preview, that's when you get the click in Search Console. And then the position is going to be different based on where you're situated on that grid. Which brings me to this. Ranking is measured left to right and top to bottom in image search as expected. And if in the blue links, you can expect to get the biggest click-through rate if you rank in position 1. When it comes to images, it's a bit different. And this is a very short summary of an eye tracking study done by somebody at a very smart university. And it was actually done by Edu's image search. And they tried to identify where do people's attention and clicks go in image search. So on a grid of 5 images per row, 3 rows, most people clicked on the middle image on the top row. So it's not position 1 that matters anymore. It seems to be whatever the position is for middle, top row, whatever the position is for middle, second row, and then it goes left and up, and then right and up. So kind of, it's hard to figure out what number would be okay, because on a mobile, the middle position would be 2, but on a desktop it could be 7, because you get a long row of images. And remember, we have no granularity in Search Console. This is where it hurts, because you can't calculate click-through rate for image search. And last thing, I promised Google Lens. I know we don't really pay attention to this much, but you should, because Google has been introducing Google Lens in everything. And since the beginning of August, it's part of image search and it's part of reverse image search. So anybody on image search can quickly click on Google Lens and find you there and then come to your website. So check your referral traffic for Google Lens and see if some of your organic traffic moved there instead. So it's not reported as organic, and what I've done is I took this source out of referral and I pushed it back into organic because it is coming from image search and it should be reported as organic. So have a look beginning of August onwards if you see a spike in Google Lens. That's it. Thank you very much.